Hi, Henry here. Welcome back to this tutorial series on how to get started with the Nero Game Engine 1. This is part 2. If you did not watch the previous video, the link is in the description. Let's continue. Let's open the editor and go back where we left. Make sure you have Simple Game selected here. As I said in the last video, the idea of the game is to get a key then find a treasure. We are going to start by building a quick prototype of the scene. We are not going to use fancy emojis at the beginning. The engine is built in a way that the graphics are separated from the code, so we can start with some ugly graphics, then build the code and finally change the graphics with some beautiful ones. So let's start by adding a ground. For the ground, we're using a line mesh. A mesh is simply an object that you can shape as you want. When you add an object to the canvas, you can move it with the mouse. If you hold Ctrl and move the mouse, you can scale the object. If you hold Shift, you rotate it. Finally, you can delete the object by holding Alt and click on the object. Okay, let's undo everything and place the ground at the right place. Don't forget to save your scene using Ctrl S or the button here. I want to add some walls at the edge so the player cannot fall. Let's switch the engine to mesh mode. You can click on the spacebar or select mesh here. If you go at the end of a line and hold Shift while moving the vertex here, you can extend the line. Let's do the same at the other edge. Now we can return to the engine object mode and add our player and the other objects. We add a small circle for the player. For the key, the door, and the treasure, we use some boxes or polygon. So this will be the key. We got our door here, let's make it bigger. Finally, this will be the treasure. Let's save the scene, go back to object mode and try to play the scene. Okay, everything fell down, that's not good. Yeah, no why, let's fix that. When you create a full project, the engine generates some code to help you set up your collisions. We don't need that. In the file simplegame.cpp, you can comment the code here. The collisions are working properly, but we don't need the key, the door and the treasure to move around. We need to have them static. Let's switch to object mode and change the mesh type to kinematic. So we've made it, we have our scene. Okay, the key and the door don't look like a key or a door, but as I said before, let's focus on the code now. We can use some beautiful images later. Before we continue, I want you to know that you have a quick help here that shows all the editor shortcuts. It's like a mini guide on how to use the editor. I would recommend you to read that at least once. Now let's do some coding. We are going to build the player movement. For that, we are going to use a feature of the engine called action object and action. Let me explain you with an image. First, we have the ball that represents the player. What we are going to do now is take that ball and put it into an object called action object. When we do that, we can then attach some actions like moving left or right and jumping to the action objects. On the right, you have a comparison with Iron Man. Tony Stark is our ball and the iron suit is our action object. When Tony Stark puts his suit on, he gets access to certain powers that are equivalent to our actions. Okay, let's continue. We need to give a name to our ball. Let's call it player ball and save the scene. You select an object with the right click. If you go to the file player.h generated by the engine, we can see that the player class inherits from physics action object. So we already got our action objects. Next step, we need to add some actions to it. In the file player.cpp, we already have some actions for moving left or right, and an action to stop moving, but we are missing the action to jump. So let's add it. It's pretty simple to add a new action. Just call the function register action, then provide the action type, its name, and the action itself. To make it simple to understand, I'm going to create and register the jump action step by step. We got our action. Let's register it now. That's it, our player can now jump, but we can impose this code. The engine provides a function that returns a jump action. Let's use that instead. Finally, it's a really bad practice to use a literal string in the code, so let's replace that by a constant. In the file constantpool.h, you have all your game constant. Let's add a new entry in the structure player action pool. Everything's good, let's clean the code. At this point, we have our action object with some actions attached to it. The last thing we need to do is to take our player ball and put it inside the action object. This is already done here in the file simplegame.cpp, but let me show you that step by step. First, we need to get the player ball. Since we know its name, we just ask the object manager to find it. You have to make sure that you got the exact name used in the editor. Then we just take the player ball and give it to the action object. These two lines of code are equivalent to this one. Let's make sure we got the player's name into the constant. At this point of the project, our player is now able to move left, right and jump. The last thing to do for the player movement is to configure the keyboard so when we press a button, the player moves. That will be for the next video.